All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I think many of you know me, but some don't probably. I'm Ahmed Kara Mustafa. I'm on the history faculty here, and I'm actually filling in for Dr. Keshavaz, who's running a few minutes late to do the introductions. Today, we're actually fortunate to have Dr. Rettig with us, and I will read his short bio for you. But I met him on at least now 2 separate meetings, or probably 3 by now, academic conferences, and I'm very happy to have him here on campus talking to you all. So Dr. Rettig is the curatorial fellow at the Freer Gallery of Art and the Arthur Sackler Gallery at the Smithsonian in downtown for the past couple of years. He holds a diplôme de premier cycle would be, from the École de Louvre 2000, and a master's degree from the Aix-Marseille. Is it Aix-en-Marseille or is it Aix-Marseille now?
Aix-Marseille.
It's Aix-Marseille University in 2003. That's where he had completed his PhD in History of Islamic Art and Archaeology on the manuscript production in Shiraz under the Akkoyundus, which were a big political entity, especially during the late 14th and early 15th century in basically Iran and Anatolia, Western Iran into central Iran and Anatolia. Rettig was previously a researcher at the Institut Français d'Études Anatoliennes, which is basically the Anatolian Studies Institute, French Anatolian Institute in Istanbul, and the DFG, which is in Germany, Emmy Noether Junior Research Group, Cosmos Ornatus, ornament in France and Persia around 1400 in comparison at the Freie Universität in Berlin. So his research mainly focuses on 15th century Persianate manuscripts, about which he delivered numerous lectures and published several articles, and continues to actually be very active on this front. He curated the exhibition called Nestali, the Genius of Persian Calligraphy, which is now on view at the Sackler Gallery, and it will stay open until about the end of April. Is what I'm told. So for those of you who haven't seen it, including myself, we still have plenty of time to go do it. And he is currently working on a monograph, a book-length study about the Freer's manuscript, Jelayirid manuscript, which is another political entity of roughly the same time period, Khosrow Shirin of Nizami, and with his colleague Masume Farhad, they are preparing the catalog of the Islamic works on paper in the Freer Gallery of Art. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Dr. Rettig for us. Please.
Thank you, Professor Kara Mustafa, for this kind introduction.
You supplied it.
And thank you. She's not here yet. Thank you, Professor Keshavaz, for inviting me to give this lecture, which is a work in progress still, on a book I'm writing about the Khosrow Shirin of Nizami, which is kept in the Freer Gallery of Art. Do you hear me? Yeah? Or should I speak louder?
Yes. Is it on? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
Okay. So, Nastali, the Genius of Persian Calligraphy, so my first exhibition, currently on view at the Sackler Gallery in Washington, is the first exhibition of its kind in North America, and probably worldwide, to shed the light on the first 2 centuries after the script Nastali came into existence in Iran, from roughly 1400 to the beginning of the 17th century. The exhibition does not reflect by any means the numerous and often subtle evolutions, regional notably, that the style encountered, but rather it focuses on the life, career, and legacy of four of the greatest master calligraphers whose works are particularly well represented in the collections of the Freer and the Sackler galleries. Those masters are Mir Ali Tabrizi, Sultan Ali Mashhadi, Mir Ali Haravi, and Mir Imad Hassani. So from 1400 basically to 1600, as Mir Imad was murdered in 1615. The achievement has long been acknowledged through the silsilas, or chains of transmission between masters and pupils, all pointing back to one sole outstanding practitioner, who was Mir Ali Tabrizi. Today, I would like to examine one fundamental aspect in the history of the Nastaliq style, which is its so-called invention. What is peculiar with and merely unique to the Nastaliq, and contrarily to the older Arabic scripts, the so-called Aqlam as-Site, so Nasr, Sulus, Muhaqqaq, Tawqi, Rayhan, and Rika, is that histories of calligraphy developed in Iran from the 16th century onward provide the name of the inventor of Nastaliq. Vadi Rat Nastaliq Khwaja Mir Ali Tabrizi hast. The inventor of the Nastaliq style of writing is Khwaja Mir Ali Tabrizi. That phrase starts the third chapter dedicated to the master of Nastaliq in the Golestan-e Honar, a treatise on calligraphers and painters composed by Qadi Ahmad Khomi around 1595, and that epitomizes this literary genre that flourished after 1500. So if you visit the exhibition, you will notice that the full name of Mir Ali Tabrizi is Ali ibn Hassan, and that there is only one work known in the world signed by him, which is the Khosrow Shirin by Nizami, kept in the Freer Gallery of Art, a manuscript famous for the beautiful paintings in the so-called classical style, Persian classical style it contains. So I'm going to demonstrate why and how we can assert that Ali ibn Hassan is the Mir Ali Tabrizi. And secondly, I shall argue that the complex conception of the manuscript Khosrow Shirin is a true revolution in the making of illustrated books in Iran, and ultimately a brilliant testimony of the genius of Mir Ali Tabrizi, a genius that lies in fact elsewhere than in his calligraphy. So recent scholarship has shown that Nastaliq developed over several decades in the second half of the 14th century and was not possibly the creation of one mastermind. For instance, and that is presented in the exhibition, this is from a Shahnameh dated 1341 in Shiraz, so the Inju dynasty, in which the Nasr, so the style of writing used here, show. Oh, I don't have a. Do you have a pointer? No.
Do we have a pointer?
No. Okay, so actually I can show it here. So Nasr is characterized by usually the letters and words sit on clearly very on the baseline. So it's very horizontal for a cursive script. And here what you start seeing is like actually slight slants of words that gives a sort of like diagonal movement that will characterize Nastaliq after. You have also, you know, letters and words sort of like ascending diagonally at the end of the line, which is usually a characteristic of Taliq, but that we'll find in Nastaliq, and you know, with like also letters and words piling up. That's sort of which is not normally, you don't see that in Nasr. So there was already an adaptation of the Nasr style to the Persian language, I mean for writing Persian, in the first half of the 14th century. Another example, which is slightly later, 1336, from Shiraz, it's that Kulliyat of Saadi, and in which you can really see the evolutions and like already the characteristic of Nastaliq, like you see this long elongation for the scene or the joints of sheen or scene of letters, or sometimes, you know, when there is no, just the junction, and really this diagonal slants, like more and more pronounced. In fact, this formative period of the Nastaliq was acknowledged by one author in the 15th century, who incidentally was also a calligrapher. Sirajuddin Hussein Shirazi wrote the calligraphy treatise known as the Tuhfat al-Muhibbin in 1454 in India, more precisely in Muhammadabad in the Deccan. He migrated to India from Shiraz, probably after the death of the Timurid prince Ibrahim Sultan, and entered the service of the Bahmanid Sultan, for whom he wrote this treatise. What Sirajuddin Hussein claims is that there were, since the inception of the Nastaliq script, two distinctive styles: the Nastaliq-e-Shiraz, practiced by copists in the capital of Fars, and the Nastaliq-e-Tabriz, developed by calligraphers active in the royal workshop. Yet, he acknowledges that Mir Ali Tabrizi codified the script, an assertion already noted in a document by Jafar Tabrizi, the chief director of the Kitab Khane, so the library cum workshop, in Herat, which was the capital of the Khorasan province under the Timurids, and under the Timurid prince Bayson Khor, so in the 1420s. Jafar Tabrizi was a direct pupil of Mir Ali Tabrizi, or, according to other sources, of his son Ubaydallah, so Ubaydallah ben Ali Tabrizi. In this document, Jafar claims that Nastaliq was first developed by Shirazi scribes until, and I quote, the time when Khwaja Mir Ali brought this script to perfection. Another author later, an Ottoman author, Mustafa Ali, claimed 150 years later, in the 1580s, on the other side of the Persian sphere, so in Istanbul, the enlightened and judicious guide of the masters of the past was Maulana Mir Ali of Tabriz, who set down the rules of the Nastaliq style. Mustafa Ali adds a bit further, no, let not be concealed that Maulana Mir Ali of Tabriz was a master inventor par excellence, Ustad Murteri Musjid in Ottoman. My Ottoman is not really good. And the supreme guide, so he was the master inventor par excellence and the supreme guide of the most illustrious masters. All attempts and efforts to refine the Nastaliq and to distinguish it from and make it superior to the sixth style, so the Akhlamacite, were initiated by him. Maulana Mir Ali was the exalted personage known as the leader of scribes, Qudwatul Kutab. But what do we know about Mir Ali Tabrizi? Barely anything. Until recently, we didn't know exactly who he was. The confusion came from the fact that two contemporaneous figures could be the Mir Ali from Tabriz. First, there is Ali ibn Ilyas, who was responsible for the copy of the 3 poems in the Masnavi form by Khwaja Kirmani, a manuscript completed in Baghdad in 1396 and now kept in the British Library. In the colophon of 2 Masnavis in this work, the Book of Humayun and the Kamal Nameh, the calligrapher gives his name as Mir Ali ibn Ilyas al-Tabrizi al-Bavarchi, Mir Ali, son of Elias, from Tabriz, the taster. And Mir is written in the Is Nastaliq, so here, and it is illustrated with these famous, beautiful paintings, and here is a page of full text. So, you know, Masnavi, it's in a four display on 4 columns, so 2 verses per line. But I'll come to that later. So that's a detail of his name. His Nastaliq calligraphy presents some peculiar characteristics. The letters and words seemingly stick to the horizontal writing line or baseline, and they are placed most often at a soft 20-degree angle to the baseline. So you can see you still have that very horizontal feeling about, you can see that this angle is very softened. It's like about 20 degrees. Which ultimately provide this Nastaliq with still a strong visual horizontal effect. There is also little variation in the thickness of the stroke. It's clearly noticeable. I mean, the difference, like if you take the sheen, like the difference between here and here, it's really very light, so it doesn't turn his pen. It's like tracing, like you would write Nasr, actually. And additionally, the upper strophe of the calf not only present at smooth angle also, so like the lines, but often you see that it's not attached here, like you can see it here, here, here. Not always, but most of the time. Another manuscript to take into consideration, if we want to talk about Mir Ali, is for the purpose of identifying the inventor of the Nastaliq script, is the Divan of Sultan Ahmed Jalaid, which is kept in the Friar Gallery of Art. Also, it does not possess an informative colophon. A later inscription ascribes the completion of the copy to Mir Ali Tabrizi, and it's probably an Ottoman inscription. But what you see is that it's very close to the end of Mir Ali ibn Ilyas, very smooth diagonal. You can notice also that the calf, the stroke of the calf is not attached to the letters, and there are some places where actually the 3 dots, which are noticeable here, you see here, the 3 dots of the sheen are put on a line and not in a triangle shape, which is something very characteristic of the Nastaliq of Mir Ali. In fact, more than being an individualized handwriting or calligraphy, Mir Ali ibn Ilyas Nastaliq belongs to a stylistic group practiced by a few individuals active in the royal workshops in Jalaid, Baghdad, and Tabriz between 1370 and 1410. I could at least gather like 5 calligraphers having the same hand in Nastaliq. Incidentally, there is another copyist named Ali ibn Hassan, who copied in Tabriz the romance of Khosrow Shirin by Nizami, sometime around 1400, as the date provided in the colophon of the manuscript, so which is now in the Friar Gallery of Art, is no more legible. So you have his name here, Ali ibn Hassan al-Sultani, and the date was here. So we don't have the date anymore. But we have the place of completion, Bedar al-Sultanate Tabriz. So at least we have two indications. So the hand of the Khosrow Shirin copy present a Nastaliq very similar to the Rwaju Kirmani's copy and the Divan of Sultan Ahmed Jalaid, handwriting. The overall impression is a certain horizontality. Again, you can notice it here, further emphasized by smooth angle for descending diagonals, corresponding roughly to a 20-degree angle, whereas later on it will be more deepened up to 45 degrees. One can only note also the relative homogeneity in the thickness of the stroke, again, that present little variation. So who is actually the Mir Ali Tabrizi, so the inventor of the Nastaliq? Ali ibn Ilyas or Ali ibn Hassan? An undated page signed by Jafar Tabrizi, whom I have already mentioned earlier, who was the chief director of the Timurid Kitabkhane in Herat in the 1420s. So an undated page of calligraphy signed by Jafar, and later in the 17th century, possibly in India, mounted into the famous Gulshan album, which is now in the Golestan Palace in Tehran, provides the answer. In this signature, in the signature of this piece, so you have actually, that's the main piece. The signature is located here, and that's the. In the signature of the piece, Jafar states that he wrote it by following the method or path, tariq, of the inventor of the prototype, Wadi Asl, Ali ibn Hassan al-Sultani. So this phrase has been made canonical from the end of the 15th century onward, notably in the calligraphic mufradat genre, which is exercise of letters, exercise consisting in the combination of single letters. And there is one, this example from Boston is presented in the exhibition. And you have the phrase, Mufradat Nasr Talif ala Wadi al-Asr, Khwajemid Ali Tabrizi. The issue is that any of those mufradat or treatises on calligraphy and tezkere on calligraphers, in any of those, the real name of Mir Ali Tabrizi is provided, as Jafar did. We always have the mufradat, Khwaja Mir Ali Tabrizi, not Ali ibn Hassan al-Sultani. So, to say the truth, the authenticity of Jafar's signature, which should be that piece, so normally from 1420s, is rather dubious. For it fits also it fits perfectly the page. I mean that was not cut from somewhere there and pasted onto the page, but it fits perfectly the page. And when you think that such albums did not exist in Jafar's time, you know, that in the first half of the 16th century, albums like that are creations from the 16th century onward, either in Iran or in India. So it is probably that page, a creation of the 17th century. The calligraphy might be genuine, though. You know, it might be Jafar, but and it looks like Jafar's hand. But the calligraphy is dubious. The signature is dubious. But it was probably a creation by somebody very knowledgeable, aware of calligraphic practices, like the use of the phrase found in Mufradat, and familiar with the silsile of calligraphers. So why Ali ibn Hassan would be the Mir Ali Tabrizi when he and Ali ibn Ilyas shared the same handwriting, when they both belong to a larger group of practitioners of Nastaliq, active at the same time, around 1400, and when we know that Nastaliq did not develop under the qalam of one single man? The answer lies in the illustrated copy of the phrase Khosrow Shirin. When one compares the Khwaja Kirmani's volume, it kept in the British Library, so the one by Ali ibn Ilyas, with the first copy by Ali ibn Hassan, so that's the first copy by Ali ibn Hassan, that's the Khwaja Kirmani's copied by Ali ibn Ilyas. The similitude between the two appears rather striking. In both cases, paintings seem to free from the zone of text. So if you think that the zone of text, what we call the mistara or mastar, is actually here, and like it, it's here. So the paintings are going deep into the margins. Paintings seem to free from the zone of text, going over into the margin. Furthermore, both have the text displayed on 4 columns, so 2 verses per line, on 25 lines, which makes a total of 50 verses per page, 100 verses per leaf, which is something important to remember. Let's now examine closely the copy of the Frères Khosrow and Shirin. What has been unnoted so far, however, is the presence of oblique lines or diagonals, like verses written diagonally. One line of text, so 4 hemistiches, each one occupying a space corresponding to 2 lines physically. And with the hemistiches always written in descending diagonals from the right to the left. These oblique lines are almost always, and the almost is important, located on the pages surrounding the paintings, but also in the last part of the manuscript before the color font zone. And so you have another example of lines, and you have several per page. As a result, each group happens also to be separated from the other by pages devoid of these oblique lines. Another particularity of these lines lies in the fact that they have to be read from the left to the right, thus providing an unconventional circular reading through the text, and creating an unprecedented, and to my knowledge, unique textual disruption. Therefore, I believe that that system of oblique lines was used here for the first time ever. And in order to inscribe the hemistiches inside diagonals, the copyists, so Mir Ali Tabrizi or Ali ibn Hassan, had to pivot the leaf in such a way that the lines appear horizontal for the copying. Indeed, a copy would never write diagonally. Once the folio turned, it appears that Mir Ali would have to write the verses up if he wanted to have it correctly displayed. If he wanted to have the text correctly displayed from left to right. And that is something not natural and even unthinkable in the act of copying or even reading. You must go from top to bottom on a page. And that is exactly what Mir Ali did here. He copied the 4 hemistiches vertically from top to bottom. But once the page reoriented to normal, the oblique lines present what could be seen as an inversion of the 2 verses they bear. Furthermore, it is interesting to examine the way the oblique lines are globally organized on pages. Yes, so most of the time, most of the time they are organized symmetrically. I mean, you have the same number of lines between here, here, and here. So you have sort of a visual symmetry on the page and on pages facing each other. Nevertheless, 2 pages caught my attention for the layouts of the written zone largely differ from the others. So this is one, recto and verso, and this is the other one, recto and verso. So they feature indeed an extensive use of diagonals, some descending, so which is the previous page, so you have descending verses here, like in the rest of the manuscripts, but the vast majority actually ascending from the right to the left. Moreover, most of those have a height corresponding to 3 lines of text and not 2, if not 4. Finally, an examination of the calligraphy on these 2 pages demonstrates that it's not Ali ibn Hassan's handwriting. The overall aspect is more sinuous, and the variation in the width of the stroke is broad and apparent. In fine, the handwriting on these 2 folios is attributable to the 16th century, and they were probably inserted when the manuscript went under a major refurbishment, probably around 1530 in Safavid Tabriz. In other words, these 2 folios replace original pages. The reason why is unclear, but one may go for a simple explanation, is that these pages the original pages were wrecked either by fire or water. But if it had been the case, though, contiguous pages would have also presented traces of damage, and incidentally, they don't have any. So the cause of removal should thus be found elsewhere, and the overall aspect of the written zones on these 2 pages may provide an answer. It would not make sense to consider the peculiar disposition of text these pages offer as a mere copy of the original ones. As we have seen previously, verses inscribed diagonally present sort of like an inversion when read from right to left, which is not the case here. So the ascending oblique verses, all of these does not present any inversion. The descending, yes, they do, actually. So what happened is that the person who was responsible for the conservation of the manuscript in the 16th century took out the 2 original pages to which these oblique lines were not obliques, but were horizontal. And if you put all these ascending oblique lines horizontally, because they do not present that so-called inversion, you have space enough for paintings, in fact, on the pages. And we might be even, we are not even able to guess where was located the paintings on these pages and what was the topic of the subject of these paintings. On the first one, so on these pages, the painting was located on the recto, so actually on this part. So you have to put this, to push that down, and it would be Khosrow drunk killing a lion outside Shirin's stand. Whereas on these 2 pages, and here you notice that you don't have any descending diagonals like in the rest of the manuscript. It's only ascending diagonals, which means all of those were horizontal. And when you do that, you have actually a full page free, a full free page. So it was a full page painting that was there, and obviously the subject was, I don't remember. Yeah, it was Khosrow and Shirin banqueting and the maidens telling stories. So yeah, so and it's actually not the only example of a full page painting like here. It's still present in the manuscript. It's Khosrow and Shirin hunting, and you notice that there is not one single verse on the page with the painting. It's a full page painting, which is important to note. So the manuscript still contains 5 paintings, but it means that with the 2 pages, there is another thing. There is another painting which is Safavid, from the Safavid period. You see that these figures have the red color, so the typical turban from the Safavid. And X-ray analysis showed that this painting is actually covering another painting underneath, which depicts, and I come back to that later, the Prophet Muhammad enthroned with surrounded by angels, whereas this one presents obviously the Prophet Muhammad with Ali and Hassan and Hussein on the thing, something with a more Shia flavor than the original paintings. So ultimately there was 8 paintings, 8 original paintings in the manuscript, and so I just put them here with what they represent and the surface they occupy. and the number of oblique lines around surrounding these paintings. So long has been postulated that oblique lines would help to create enough space within the zone of text in order to insert illustration. You know, if you put a line on 2, it makes like one free line. Sort of you push actually the text further down, and you create space for a painting. Consequently, one may think that the amount of lines surrounding one image would match the number of lines occupied by this painting. As a matter of fact, in the Roscoe and Schiering's copy, it does not, except for one painting by half a line, which is Falad, bought by Chabot in front of Schiering. So there is only one painting, roughly, where the numbers match. So the absence of a genuine consistency between the number of oblique lines and the space occupied by illustration would jeopardize the hypothesis of oblique lines having a technical function, at least when we look at the paintings and the immediate page environment. Let's now consider this issue on a global level, that is considering the whole manuscript. The painting occupies a total, a total, and I'm going to give numbers, so just sorry for that, but it's important. So a total of 180.5 lines in the manuscript, whereas there are only 122.5 oblique lines in the manuscript. So it makes a difference of 58 lines. So it doesn't make sense. In fact, we have to look at other parts of the text structure whose construction is seldom examined and questioned, that is, rubrics and titles. To this intent, so as I said, it may be worth defining the nature of what we consider being a line, and which is twofold. First, there is the physical line on the page, whose body is comprised between two strokes, 2 lines of the masthead. So there's like 25 lines per page. And second, there is the written line, so the text itself, which is constituted by 2 verses. So one line is constituted by 2 verses on these pages. And these 2 verses formed by 2 hemistiches, so that's why you have 4 columns. In other words, the fundamental intangible unit here is the verse and not the line, which on a page correspond physically to half a line. As a result, when you have a heading with a height of 2 lines, like here it's 3, you find displayed on its lateral side one complete line, at once material and textual, because you have like 2 verses. But when a title occupies, like here, a space with a height corresponding to an odd number, then naturally you gain half a line, because you have a group of 3 verses, which physically equals to a line and a half. So the manuscript Roscoe was Schiering. So, and here you have even 5 and 7 lines with titles. I mean, that title doesn't exist in Nizami, actually. It's a creation for this manuscript. So if you count the number of rubrics with odd numbers, you have 81 81 rubrics. So consequently, 81 rubrics, if you think that's the number of verses you have also, you have to divide it by 2, which means 40.5 lines. So, and if you addition everything, the number of lines, the total you have still missing 16.5 lines, which is a bit crazy. You know, like sometimes art historians were going into numbers, but so it still doesn't work. So in fact, where do you have to go for finding this 16.5 missing line? First, which is the opening title. So this part, which corresponds to 6 lines, 2, 4, 6. That's as high. That's exactly that height. And to the color font page, where if you take this part and this part, correspond to 10 and 11 lines. So, and then you arrive to the total of the lines necessary to insert the paintings in the text. So, as a first conclusion, we are now able to grasp the very initial conception of the manuscript, for which every component, their form and their display, have been carefully thought even before the physical making of the object. Another consequence of this amazing creation is perceptible in the complex relationship and the establishment of a subtle dialogue between text and image that has been seldom, if never, examined. If you take one, and I'll take shortly one example, which is the painting of Khosrow sees Shirin bathing. So in order to grasp the logic that underlies the construction of the painting, we must consider the painting and the page with the painting within the manuscript context. On the facing folio here, both the illuminated heading and the gilded oblique lines appear visually distinctive. The title displayed, so here, the title displayed as facing the painting reads Didane Khosrow Shirindra Barsare Hishmat Neboshinart. Khosrow sees Shirin of her embarrassment and of how he recognizes her. And I'm not a literary person, so the Khosrow Shirin has never been translated into English. So it might be bad translation, like definitely not poetical when it comes to the verses for rendering Nizami. So this title, it would not only introduce the episode that follows, so the text would start actually here, so this text. It is also introducing the painting displayed on the opposite folio, with the depiction actually of 3 different moments of the stories. Khosrow discovers Shirin bathing in a pool, embarrassment as she modestly covers herself with her hair, and Khosrow recognizing her and being astonished, which is usually rendered by the fact that he puts his index on his mouth. Interestingly, there might be even a more complex way to read the painting, its setting and composition. Indeed, without reading the text, what we think we are witnessing here is Khosrow on the top of a hill, looking down at Shirin bathing in a paradise-like landscape. A horse, Shabdiz, staying in the background, his mouth open as he informs Shirin that a stranger gazes at her. Opposite to him, to Shabdiz, stands Khosrow, although the latter is separated from Shirin's horse by this descending column of text. Now, this column of text, which comprises 2 verses, so 4 hemistiches, naturally leads and guides visually the reader through the landscape down to Shirin and the pool. What reads here, however, is Khosrow softly talking to himself, as introduced by the previous hemistich, Daron or Estagi or Estani Goft, so which is here, and then starts the columns, which means that when the reader reaches the break line, so the 2 verses before the painting, is in Khosrow's mind. And what Khosrow says is, could it be that idol of beauty, Booty John, would be mine, and that horse be mine? And he was not conscious that his horse, black like the night, Anshabrang, and this moon would unexpectedly come and stay in his castle. As a result, the break line points to the fact that Khosrow's thoughts at this very moment are not focused only on Shirin, but rather also on her horse Shabdiz. While the setting of the text with the column leading visually down to Shirin, and she is an idol of beauty and a moon, after all, both the arrangement within the verse centered around the figure of the horse, alongside with the display of Khosrow and Shabdiz on both sides of the column, emphasize that in fact Khosrow is also citing Shabdiz, a scene that is actually relegated into the background. And in the foreground, Shirin might be the focus of attention, as we saw previously, but the main protagonist here in the scene would be the landscape with the water source and the pool in its center. As a matter of fact, the illuminated oblique line on the previous folio refers to this idea. A meadow appeared similar to the Garden of Paradise. There was running a source resembling the source of life, located in the darkness and confused, muddied by its gleaming and spreading water. This description of the place where the first dramatic encounter of Khosrow with Shirin takes place, and whose beauty announces Shirin's one as well, is in fact also annunciating in words the subsequent painting. In that sense, one can understand why the painter extended the illustration into the margin in order to have a square surface, with the landscape occupying more than 2/3 of it. The natural setting may then have to be considered as one of the main actors, a fact that is also visually underlined in the text itself by the gilded diagonal line. These two highlighted verses were not chosen randomly, and they announce one aspect of the forthcoming painting. So we may now suggest that there are 3 moments in the text that directly relate to the painting. The verses inscribed diagonally that emphasize one episode or action in the subsequent illustration. The title that not only gives the general theme of the painting, but also point to 3 different moments in the text that are depicted in the painting. And the break line, so the immediate text that precedes the painting, in which the verses are more psychologically descriptive rather than providing the description of an action. Thus, we have at least 3 layers of pictorial reading with the text. This complexity with multiple textual references for understanding the painting, or choosing one way of looking at it instead of another, applies to the other illustrations, and I won't go through them today. So apply to the other illustration as well, but each time in a different manner and with more intricacy that I won't develop that today. But I will just come back as a conclusion to this painting with underneath the depiction of the prophet enthroned. So Carol Guest in 1944 was the curator at the Freer Gallery of Art, wrote in the curatorial notes about these paintings. The painting is one of the kind that Arnold, so an art historian from the early 20th century, describes as, and I quote, isolated pictures of what may be termed as Santa Conversazione. In Italian it's written. The emphasis given to the figure of Ali marks it as a Shia picture. It has nothing to do with the text of the book and may possibly have been placed in it by or for a Shia owner. Unquote. This statement is somewhat accurate, for indeed the place attributed to Ali on the painting definitely confers a Shia flavor to it. But it is also partially wrong, as it actually has something to do with the text. The full page image is located in the chapter, and that's actually the painting under. It's a drawing of from the X-ray analysis from the original painting laying under. So the full page image is located in the chapter Darna de Nabi, so the eulogia on the prophet that we usually find at the beginning of every poetic work in the Masnavi form. The addition of the illustration of the Safavid illustration at this location of the text is thus not incidental. Furthermore, reading the text, and it's a full page painting, and this one is also a full page painting. So reading the text here on the break line and the continuity of the text on the verso of the page shows that there is any disruption in Nizami's text. So, and the break line reads, he, the Prophet Muhammad, defined 4 limits to the palace of the law, and he eternally established its foundation on 4 walls. From his law, so that's on the next page, he brought novelty to the prophecy, and he encouraged wisdom under its protection. So, which means actually it's a depiction of Muhammad acknowledging, installing the Sharia with the 4 caliphs, the Caliph Rashiduns. So this is actually a very Sunni picture, and that's why probably it was covered by a Safavid owner. So what is also unique with this painting, it's not only the fact that it's on full-page painting, is that it's the only one in the volume where there is no oblique line surrounding the painting. And I guess that the reason would be that in this short section of the Na'at Nabi, any verse concerning the Prophet should be considered as more important than another. And as these oblique lines were also used for reading the paintings, here you wouldn't do it. So the text speaks for itself, and so does at last the image. So it is astonishing to notice that the whole manuscript, with every component of the book, has been thought all at once and is actually perfect, leading even to an unseen feature so far, which is the presence of 3 full-page paintings devoid of any text, not even one verse. Like the Khwaja Kirmani's version, there is still at least 1 verse inserted in the painting. Whose brilliant mind can be behind such work? I would just answer for now that we may attribute mainly the conception of the manuscript to the calligrapher, because he's the one who thinks the conception of the manuscript before the others, and so he decides actually what, where the painting should be and what should be in these paintings. So I think that is where the true genius of Ali ibn Hassan, as known as Mir Ali Tabrizi, resides. But that is a story that has not been told yet. And I think that is what makes him superior to Ali ibn Ilyas, so the supposedly other Mir Ali. But I think it's a whole new way of thinking the illustrated book. And that's what we have with Ali ibn Hassan, so Mir Ali Tabrizi. So I think that's why he was picked up. He was chosen to be the Mir Ali. And not for the Nastaliq reasons, as there were at least 5 persons practicing the same kind of Nastaliq. He came up with something else, something new. So yeah, that's
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have a question. I'm sorry for throwing it like late, like or else, but as you were showing those slides of text, in more than one instance, the last word of the line or the rhyme was kind of hiding underneath the margin. Part of the text was kind of eaten up.
Yeah, because
is that common?
These margins,
Mm-hmm.
they're 16th century.
Oh, okay.
There were the original manuscript was like cut. You know, each page was cut and pasted onto new margins. And these gold flakes margins are typical from Safavid Tabriz, actually. So the whole manuscript was remounted onto new margins, and that is probably when the 2 pages with the paintings that we don't see anymore were taken out and replaced. The replacement is rather unique, you know, because we have. I looked for these pages in the albums. You know, often they were taken and put into albums, And there is a page from the Khwaja Kedmani in the British Library, which is now in the Bahram Mirza album. So a Safavid album made for the Prince Bahram Mirza. And in the Khwaja Kedmani, they did not replace that page. They just took it out, and because it was beautiful, they pasted it into the albums. For this manuscript, they carefully replaced the pages with the paintings, and did with the text what I described. So, which is sort of rather
Can I ask
unique.
one more?
Yes.
I worked with manuscripts for my PhD work and a collection in London, and I was told more than once, talking to people who worked with manuscripts, that there were conservators who could divide a page so that they could take painting on both sides out.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Paintings or text. Yeah, you can not always do that, but the way the paper is sometimes made, you can just separate the. Yeah, there is sort of
depending on the paper.
It's the fibers that they don't get one into each other intricate. They're not intricately joined one to each other, but they sort of stick on two leaves, which makes one. So you just separate them one. Not always, but you can do, and the paper has to be sort of thick still, not very very thin, but that is doable. That was done sometimes, but.
So I'm trying to wrap my mind around Mirali's genius. So essentially, in order for him to actually decide on the plan of a book, he has to count all the verses. He has to decide how many verses per page, what kind of headings,
Yeah.
and then where do the paintings, however many, and then he has to calculate all that
and which exactly.
And that's his genius, right?
That's
he executes all that with incredible attention to detail.
Because what they would do, what they would do, and what has been done in the Khwaja Kedmani, for instance, where there is no oblique lines, is that what the calligrapher, or the one who decides for the iconographic program, would do is to play with the text itself, which means deletions or additions of verses, the text itself.
So that you can open up space for the...
Yeah, and like that you would have the paintings exactly where you want. But which means you have to alter the text.
Yeah.
Which I think there was studies on the Khwaja Kedmani, and so there's evidence that a lot of verses were taken out right before a painting, in order to have the paintings fitting the place, that place, and to have also the break line. I mean, the text before the painting, which is the most important text for the paintings. With that system, I don't think Mirali had to delete any verse, because, and if you consider the page, as I said, that on one leaf, actually you have 50 verses, then you count that. Okay, I think the Hosro Shirin, it's 5,000. Yeah, 5,500 sort of verses. So which makes a bit more than 50 folios. Yes, and then with that you say, okay, if I want paintings exactly there, then he came up with that idea of oblique lines, because each time, and it's like typing a Word document. Each time you want to insert something, the rest is going down. And you insert the thing. So that's what he did actually with the system of oblique lines. But not only the oblique lines, he used also the rubrics. And there are a few long rubrics that are not Nizami, but and that were placed in front of, on the other page facing paintings. So they were obviously created by the person responsible for the copying of the book.
So specifically, to go back to that scene where Khosrow sees Shirin, the shape of the text, and do you think your justification again for the long column dipping into the painting? Otherwise, if you count the numbers, you could actually have the text all the way continue on top into that empty corner on the left hand.
Yeah, that could be there.
That it could have been moved up, I think.
Yeah.
But why does he do it that way? To draw attention to that text.
To
right?
draw
That's
attention,
what you're
it
saying.
draws attention. You know, when you read it,
In other words, it's incorporated into the visual program of the
Yeah,
painting,
I
which
think.
takes a hell lot more. That means, you know, they're really talking about this and figuring out the calligrapher, assuming that the calligrapher and the painter are not the same. And they're really sort of talking about, all right, how do we deal with this text on this page? And then they come up with the idea that since the relevant lines are there, we should.
But I
Oh,
think
is that what that- what's
I think that's where I think the genius of Merali is. I think he's the sole responsible for everything in that. So including, you know, why these two verses and not others, you know, being like because you even don't have the symmetry that you should have if you consider that was purely, you know, functional or aesthetical. No, when you reach the text, that part which describes when Shirin is actually coming into the water, you already like see. I mean, and you see the facing painting, and then you arrive at the title, and then you have that part with the break line. When you read it, you are in Khosrow's mind, but you realize it's actually that. Whereas the physicality of the text leads you down again to Shirin, so which is sort of very, very complex. Yeah.
And because that corner is left empty, it's very clear that this column that comes down is intentional.
Is intentional.
Yeah.
It's not that he ran out of space and used it, but it's intentional.
Thank you very much for your talk. I have a question about the Keshide technique in Nastani.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed that these are very old compared with the modern rules and standards? I've noticed that we have a lot of Keshidas at the beginning of the line. Modern masters, as far as I guess I remember, they always say that divide the line by 5 in 5 equal sections and put the Keshide in 2 and 4. Makes it very symmetrical. This is the golden rule. I see that it's not happening here.
No, because that's. I mean, we are at the very beginning of Nasalik, and I think that only starts in the 17th century, late 17th century. It's after Milimad. I think it's at the same time that they elaborate the rules for the Shekase Nasalik, and then so which is about
And generally
1680s.
speaking, these Keshidas, are they aesthetically driven or are they also thematically driven too? For example, the calligrapher just like the section of the line and just put it like the Quran. A lot of the times there are words that you're supposed to extend them, so the Nas also does that, giving a hint to the reader. Does anything like this happen?
There is no precise rules actually, or each master had his own has its own rule. And if you go into to see the exhibition, there is actually 2 pieces by Mirimad, which are the same exact quatrain by the same master, and you can see they were placed together into an album. So you look at them, and Kevin saw them, and it's striking out. Then you just look for the differences between the calligraphy and these joints between letters that are not supposed to be there. They are on the other pages, and but I think there was a freedom for of the calligrapher to do whatever he wanted and wherever he wanted to shorten or elongate either letters or joints between letters.
I guess nowadays it's very standardized.
Yeah, but Nastaliq nowadays is very different from the 15th and 16th centuries Nastaliq.
In what sense? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Well, it's first it has been codified.
Like 4 dots to
Yeah,
the other
things like that, and that comes very late.
Late 17th
and-
century.
Yeah, late 17th century, and that's a reaction actually to the Ottomans also, when in the 16th century the Ottomans decided to develop their own type of Nastaliq that they call Taliq actually. There was a reaction in Iran against that, and they came to and they were sort of like, Iran was between India and Turkey, and the Mughals started also to develop their own Nastaliq, a Nastaliq very very different that you see now actually in Pakistan. It's used for Urdu, so which is so they developed new rules sort of for Nastaliq in these 3 areas, and in Iran it was really in reaction. And still nowadays, when you show like to Iranians Ottoman Taliq, you have to look at their face. They're like, that is not Nastaliq.
So would you say that the early stages are more spontaneous? Or from, because they're not measuring with dots and things like that? Or does it depend on what text they are copying?
Also, and on what type? That's not Nastaliq Rejali. That's not the large form of the script they were using for copying albums. That's the Nastaliq, the minute form of the script that were used to copy full text, which is very different from these large Nastaliq script where you have the calligrapher had far much freedom, even today, to play with the variation in the stroke. Here you're really constrained because you have to copy the calligrapher had to copy 6,000 verses, so you go fast, and so. But what is interesting is that kind of Nastaliq, which is very archaic, we would say, like under Jafar, so like in 1420, so probably 20 years after that, is very different from this Nastaliq, to the point that Jafar was called the second inventor of Nastaliq. That's why, but
Innovation.
yeah, because it's sort of like codified. Okay.
Well, I think we should thank you and
Thank
stop.
you.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful. Thank you.
I hope it makes you look at manuscript differently after
Yes,
when
yes,
you think.
yes. Yeah, I'm sorry I came in late. I had to. Oh my goodness, it's much more beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
it's unbelievable.
We have our